Reported earnings is seeing growth in their healthcare business across both government and commercial sectors. Revenue there up more than 260% since the first half of 2020. Joining us now is Palantir COO Shyam Sankar. It's good to see you, Shyam. So clearly it's coming off of a low base, but there's a lot of potential. First, COVID, I know, is big for you in terms of managing some of the government's work on vaccines and medications, and now monkeypox. Tell us about it.
Well, thanks for having me back, Sarah. Absolutely. You know, one of the things that makes our presence in healthcare unique is that we span the entire value chain. So, of course, working with government agencies to help them distribute vaccines efficiently, plugging into the pharma companies and the biomanufacturing processes that create them, driving the hospital operations that is getting those needles into your arms and driving the healthcare outcomes, clearing the backlog in the wake of COVID.
Why should investors care about this? I talked to our team actually reached out to a number of analysts ahead of today wondering about the healthcare business, and they said it's still such a tiny slice. Clearly, there's growth there. How big of a part of the business do you intend it to be?
I think healthcare is absolutely massive. The number of opportunities that we're seeing to help the U.S. clear the patient backlog with hospital operations, to deal with nursing shortages. COVID really put healthcare on its knees here. It showed the weaknesses in the system. It spurred innovation. It's created funding to go after and fix these problems. That's as true in the U.S. as it is in the U.K. and Canada and continental Europe, in Japan. And so we see a lot of opportunity all the way from the preclinical, clinical R&D side through clinical trials, all the way to the payer and provider side.
Broadly, what is happening beyond healthcare, Shyam, with the government business? You were expecting all these deals to close and have pushed that out.
We're really excited about the government business. It has grown at a 35% compounded rate, the U.S. government business in particular, over the last decade. The nature of these contracts, when you're going after $100 million, billion-dollar contracts, they are lumpy. Some years you see 0% growth. Some years you see 50% plus growth. But what's important for us is really the long-term trend, the investments that we're making to be the operating system for public health care, for defense and national security, for civil administration.
How do you think about the resilience of those businesses and what you offer in a recessionary environment?
I think they become even more important. If you look at in the wake of COVID, all those people were wondering, will these be enduring investments? And you see crisis after crisis that those capabilities have met their moment. The monkeypox vaccine is being allocated on the same infrastructure that the COVID vaccine was being allocated on. The legitimation crisis that Western institutions face right now in the wake of the recession and the need to take care of people has only become more important. You see that not only in the U.S., but again, in Western Europe as well.
Do you think there's a disconnect between the stock market and what you're seeing fundamentally? Do you think Wall Street understands your story? I'm sure it's been frustrating to watch the reaction to earnings and just what we've seen all year. The stock is down almost 50%.
When we look at the business, the thing that we are most excited about is what is going on in the U.S. So if you look at the U.S. commercial business, the customer count growth there has grown from 34 customers a year ago to 119 customers in the last quarter. Obviously, that's starting on a small base, but that's incredible growth, and it shows you how much runway we have ahead of us. The revenue there grew 120% year over year, and as I mentioned earlier, the U.S. government business has a long track record of growing at 35%. And so together, we see a lot of growth ahead of us here, and I think investors are starting to pay attention to that story.
And curious, are you seeing an increase in business related to what's happening between Russia and Ukraine and the uncertainty of that war?
We are, perhaps not in the ways that people would expect. I think alongside the crumbling of this 40-year geopolitical consensus that the world would get safer, more predictable, simpler, I think you're also seeing perhaps the crumbling of another consensus. We all thought software would eat the world. To me, it kind of looks like the world ate software, that the world needs a new type of software, a software that is built with the assumption that efficiency comes from resiliency. How do we help auto manufacturers keep their factories open when their wiring harnesses come from Ukraine? How do we ensure supply chains continue to work? So across our commercial business, we're seeing revenue that's coming from folks investing in dealing with these disruptions, and maybe a little countercyclically, we plan to continue to invest through this cycle here. We have seen, whether it was the global financial crisis, ISIS attacks on Europe, or even COVID, that leaning in ahead of time, working with customers ahead of revenue has always been a good bet for us.
Right. So why the decision to withdraw the long-term annual growth guidance of 30%?
Well, what we have visibility into right now is clearly full year 22. So we thought it would be best to create clarity around what's going to happen there. Alex mentioned on the call, and we still believe we'll achieve 4.5 billion in revenue in 2025.
And where does healthcare, just to bring it back to the healthcare situation, since we're focused on monkeypox, we're still unfortunately dealing with COVID, beyond commercial applications. Well, where does it fit in the long-term growth plan and ultimate path to profitability?
Healthcare is a significant part of that. You see the growth that we're seeing in life sciences, with payers, with providers, as well as with governments. And it really leverages the unique abilities that we have, privacy-first data platform that enables collaboration. We helped 70 academic medical centers pull together the largest integrated COVID patient record to study long COVID and drive therapeutics to market. These capabilities are quite unique, and I think they're gonna position us well to see sustained growth over the last 2 years. It's been 91% compounded in healthcare here.
Shyam, thank you for joining us to highlight it. We appreciate it. Shyam Sankar, COO Palantir.